Hello and welcome to my Predaplant deck profile. Now before we jump right into the list itself, I actually want to announce that I'm very happy and excited that we finally reached 2,000 subscribers. Now, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for 2,000 subscribers. We'll have to wait and see because unfortunately I do have my own personal life things right now with few things. I'm probably going to make an update video for next week about this, but we'll see about that. But for the most part, thank you once again for anybody who have joined or just recently here, or for those who stick for me for so far. We finally reached the second number and we can only get bigger from there. But once again, if you are new to the channel, why not consider subscribing? Our family is getting bigger. All the people in this community are pretty awesome, and you're more than welcome to also check on me on social media, which I will be very happy to help you if you need some Yu-Gi-Oh related stuff. But that's out of the way, we can finally jump right into Predaplant deck profile, which apparently is a 2,000 subs special in a way. Whatever, let's jump right into it. Alright, so for the Predaplant list itself, let's get started, and we're going to start things off with the Predaplant lineup, obviously. We're going to start things off with 3 copies of the best card in the deck, or for Scorpio, followed up by Serasinyant as a 3-of as well, 2 Klimasandu, 1 Ogre, 1 Hydra, 1 Sphenedia, 1 Cobra, to round off the Predaplant lineup, which should be 12 cards. Now, for all of these guys' effects, let's get started. So starting things off, we're going to start off with Orpheus Scorpio effect. This is a very famous card. If you were played the game from Maximum Crisis till now, this is card became really famous. It's one of the best starters that used to be back in the day. You normal summon this. You search, you basically discard a card, and then you basically summon this out of your deck, which allowing you, if it's special summoned by what it called, a Predaplant-like effect, you get to add, or should I say monster effect, you get to add fusion card or a polymerization card from your deck to your hand, but only once per duel. But it didn't really matter because back in the day we had Brilliant Fusion. Today, Orpheus Scorpio is mostly a card that is used in the own deck, and it does still add for you a fusion spell if you summon the Darlingtonia Cobra, but you do things a little bit differently. Sometimes you even don't want to summon Darlingtonia Cobra, and you actually want to summon one of these guys, so that's why this card is really good in this deck. This one is definitely the best card in the entire lineup. And yeah, we also explained Darlingtonia Cobra because, you know, it's kind of like these two are kind of going together. Then we're going to go over why I'm running Serasinyant. Serasinyant is a very interesting card. It's really not that great in terms of, like, you know, its search effect, because it's need to send from the field to the graveyard by a card effect or destroyed and sent to the graveyard. But Predaplant is a very interesting deck. It's kind of like a fusion combo control deck at the same time. It's kind of like a weird thing that, like, sometimes if you're trying to go Orpheus Scorpio, it doesn't work, and your opponent, like, kind of like negates you, and, like, you end up with an Orpheus Scorpio only on the field or something, and no way to extend, and this one is in your hand. It definitely saves you and giving you the ability to play next time. So this is a very much needed hand trap, and it's also a name, and it's also level 1, so it does kind of like sometimes work if you want to run the Link Haribo, I guess. I specifically don't, but if you want to, you could. Point is, this card is great. So yeah. Then we have Klimasandu. And Klimasandu is a very good card for the whole purpose that it's a fusion on legs. Now, it's not a free off because honestly it's really hard sometimes to fusion, but the point is it's a mini fusion on legs by itself to fusion a dark monster. But if the opponent monster also have a counter on it, like a Predator counter on it, which is the main gimmick of the archetype, technically you get the ability to take that monster and use it as a fusion material. So for example, let's say you put on a Shadow monster a Predator counter, and you run in your extra deck, for example, Winda. You could just make the window with this guy. So it's kind of like a weird thing. It almost never happens, but it is a thing. And then for the last 3 one-offs, which are not Darlingtonia Cobra, running 1 Ogre. Ogre and Hydra kind of like do the same thing. They basically tribute monsters with Predator counters. and essentially like serve as reverse kaijus. But Ogre is even better because Ogre is like a card that you could summon out of your deck with Orpheus Scorpio or with other effects, and then essentially like when it's sent to the graveyard, it just put on everything a counter. It's also a tuner which doesn't really come up because we don't really run here synchros, but if you ever want to run this in any deck, like maybe in the future, or maybe in the Rose Dragon-like deck, this is an option because it's a level 6 tuner, so it is something like that. But the point is, you send it to the graveyard, you make everything have a counter, then you contribute one of your opponent monster, and then you're getting a 2000 attacking bit stick immediately, which is ridiculous. This one does the same thing, but it's a little bit worse. It also have the effect kind of like banish a Predaplant monster and then reduce your opponent attack by like 500 a monster, which doesn't really matter, but it's still a thing. And then we have Sphenidia, which is a good one-off sometimes. If it's attack a monsters that have a lower level than it, he basically gets to summon any Predator Plant monster from the deck. And why is that important? Because on summon, this one giving you the ability to put a Predator Plant counter or Predap counter on a monster. And every monster that is not a link or an Xyz that you put a Predap counter on it, it's become a level 1 immediately. So that's really, really good, giving you the ability to play. Like sometimes you're going this, attacks into something, then you summon this, and you just go to town. Sometimes you need to do these kind of things, or sometimes you just use this to summon this. It's a weird thing. It's a really intricate lineup of monsters. Obviously, you can decide to run whatever you need. You, at the very least, want to run like 10 or 11, but I think like these are the best monsters right now in the format, or just generally for Predator Plants. Then for the additional supporting engines, I guess, we're running 3 copies of Lawnfire Blossom, obviously, followed up by 3 Edge Imp Chains, 1 Sabers, 1 Cloak, and the 1 Silent Boots. This is the supported lineup of the deck that I decided to run. Lawnfire Blossom is basically, you have all plants. It makes sense, you want to run 3 copies of this, so it's just like basically tribute, like, 3 additional copies of Orpheus Scorpio, or whatever you need. Now, one thing I should mention about Lawnfire Blossom in this deck specifically, unlike a lot of other decks that just only run Orpheus Scorpio, you don't want to do Lawnfire Blossom into Lawnfire Blossom into Lawnfire Blossom into Orpheus Scorpio, because in this deck you have multiple plant monsters, so it's still very, very useful to keep this in the deck, so you can top deck this into something else that you want, so that's really cool. Then the Gimp Chain, I guess, we'll move on into that. And some people might actually going to wonder why I'm running 3 chains and the 1 sabers instead of like 2 chains and 1 sabers. The reason for that is because chains is absolutely ridiculous in this deck, like insanely good. Chains is the preferred card for you to discard with Orpheus Scorpio. If you discard this with Orpheus Scorpio, you're set to go. Like even if your opponent like basically hand trap you, they can only hand trap one of the effects because the cost is to send this to the graveyard, then you start the chain links, so you can choose if you want the Darling Tonya Cobra effect to go off or the chains effect to go off, and you basically search Patchworks, which is really good. And like I rather have 3 of this than the 3 Patchworks because this is also a dark monster and it's quite better in my opinion. It can also search itself sometimes if you need to, so that's also an option. But mostly this card is ridiculous. It's giving you the ability to have the best discard outlet for your entire deck, and it's a monster and it's a dark and it's great. And then you have Sabers, which is the other one. Sabers is really, really great, especially with these guys, but we'll get to them in a second. This one is just the preferred option for you to search, and it's just a great card to just have in the graveyard because you're able to just basically put a card on the top of your deck and summon it back. It's level 3. It works with a lot of things, which you'll also see in the extra deck, and just really, really good to have like a preferred option to kind of like have a graveyard setup. And then these 2... obvious, you're running a mini Phantom Knight engine here. This one actually will really save you in this Phantom Knight engine because you can put one of these in the top of your deck if you open up with them, which is really great. But these guys are mostly like extenders. Even if you draw into them, it's not the end of the world. You do have different plays. So it's like in this deck specifically, opening up with a Phantom Knights is really not the end of the world. You definitely prefer not to, and I'm going to show you the combo that like it's the best way to not open up with them. But even if you open up with them, it's not the end of the world, and it's really, really good. Or should I say, like, show you the best combo with them, basically. But the point is, like, even if you open up with them, it's not the end of the world. It's still really great. Like, you don't want to open up with multiples, but like I said, Sabers sometimes just save your ass in that particular aspect because it can put one of these on the top of your deck. So that's really, really good. And then for the last monster of the deck, obviously, we want to run a Hand Trap slot, which is also a level 3, funny enough. We're running 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Now, this one can be any Hand Trap of your choice. It can be either Ash Blossom if you think like it's okay. I just went with this because it's the most generic one. It can be Effect Veiler if you think this is a little bit too expensive. It can be Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion because it's really good in this format. But one that I would mention right now, if you really want to run this and you don't want to run Ash, is Skull Meisner. And Skull Meisner is very good apparently this format, and it's a dark, so it's worked with this archetype perfectly. So if you don't want to run Ash, you can run Skull Meisner instead. You want at the very least have like 1 Hand Trap slot. And if I could have I would have cut what his name again? Saraceniant to run something else, like an additional Hand Trap. But unfortunately I still need Predaplant's names, and Saraceniant is not the worst. But, like, if I could run more Hand Traps, that would be preferred, but unfortunately, it's not that possible. But that's pretty much does it for the monsters. Now move on into the spells. So for the spells themselves, we're going to start with the Predaplant ones, 2 Predapractice, 1 Predaponics, and then the 1 Predarunning. Very self-explanatory. First off, we have Predarunning, which is basically a Premature Burial, which is really, really good. So, you know, it's a searchable Premature Burial. It's very, very easy to get out, especially if you have a Saracenian. So sometimes, like, you use a Saracenian before the turn, then you use this to summon, like, your Orphis Scorpio that they get rid of, and then essentially go to town. It's a weird thing, that's how the deck works. Sometimes, like, if your opponent stops you, you're able to just use this again later down the line, because of the fact that it just helps you in that regard, or just bring one of your bigger fusions, which is really cool. Predaponics help you unload your hand or help you just summon things out of the graveyard. It does negate their effects, and you do have a maintenance cost, but it's still like kind of like a Monster Reborn of sorts that you can use, which is really, really great. So having the 1 copy is okay. It only works on level 4 or lower, so do keep that in mind, but it's still really great. And then you have Predapractice, which Predapractice is interesting. It's allowing you to special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand, and then add a Predap card from your deck to your hand. So basically you can add all of your monsters and all your spells that are Predaplant. But it does lock you for the fusions for the rest of the turn. Now, it doesn't really matter for the most part, but it is something that should be mentioned because, you know, it's a searcher, it's great, but it does lock you into fusion. Like I said, it most of the time doesn't really matter, but it should be mentioned that that's what it does. So, yeah, this card is great. That's because of that we only run 2 copies. Then, for our fusion spell and our kind of like fusion searcher, we're running 2 copies of Patchworks, followed up by 2 copies of generally normal good polymerization, then 3 copies of super polymerization, 1 copy of ultra polymerization, and then the 1 copy of instant fusion. This is the lineup of spells or fusion spell related cards that you want to run. Instant fusion is a searchable target. You can search this and then summon like a Millennium Eyes Restrict or something else if you prefer. I specifically don't own a Millennium Eyes Restrict, but I am going to mention that because it's really, really good. I'm running a 1000 Eyes Restrict instead for the time being, but once I'm going to get a Millennium Eyes in my collection, which I ordered already, it's just not here yet, I'm definitely going to run Millennium Eyes Restrict for this card because you sometimes open up with this and then you're able to search this, and this will just allow you to secure plays because it's Millennium Eyes Restrict. Speaking of Ultra Polymerization, which I mentioned, Ultra Polymerization is basically 1 card linked to and a Predaplant fusion, basically, or even 1 card linked 3. It's really, really good. It was good before, like, in the start of Master Rule 4, basically, but then, like, Predaplant kind of, like, fell off. But now in Master Rule 5, it's absolutely ridiculous again. But you only need the 1 copy because it's really not that easy, because you need to get monsters on the field, so that's why it's not that great. But it's still a great card. It cannot be basically interrupted with one of his effects, which is really great. So you pay 2,000, you fusion someone from the field, 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, and then you can basically banish this from the graveyard immediately to target that fusion monster and summon the 2 materials from the graveyard with attack and defense 0, and their effect are negated. But it's still giving you like materials to just play, which is really great. Then Super Polymerization, this is a primary target for you to search, and sometimes you even use this with Verte Anaconda. You summon a Verte Anaconda, you turn the opponent monster into dark, and you go Super Polymerization. It's really, really great. It's a very, very good card in this deck, and it's just like, it's a card that, like, the deck is kind of, like, centered around, and it's also shown in the anime like this, so it's really, really great to kind of, like, have this card at 3 off in this deck, because it's just a great removal card, and this deck really capitalized on Super Polymerization well. Like, you have a lot of ways to just, like, turn things into dark, or, like, put Predator counters on them, and then just use them against your opponent, and just, like, use this. It's really, really great. It's not the best right now, but I think, like, once I think we're getting the Eldritch Fusion, which is in Blazing Vortex, this is going to become a little bit better. So just going to say that out there right now. And then, obviously, Patchwork, search this. That's how that works. There's no really need any elaboration in that department. And then for the last 3 cards are the Phantom Knight Traps, 1 Shade Brigandine, and then 2 Fog Blades. Through the combo, or, you know, generic combo that you're doing, which I will show at the end, you basically go through all of these. That's how that works most of the time. So that's really, really cool, and I like this quite a bit. This is a pretty self-explanatory. It's 2 negations. It's just really, really great for the deck itself. And then for the extra deck. For the extra deck itself, we're starting things off with the 1 copy of Starving Venom, or Greedy Venom, sorry. 1 copy of Triff, 1 copy of Dragostapelia, 2 Starving Venom, 2 Chimera Affligia. I don't know why I got stuck with that, and that's it for the Predaplant fusions. And then we also run 1 copy of Verite Anaconda, which is also part of the lineup. Now, Chimera Affligia is a great card. Chimera Affligia either have the ability to, like, banish stuff which are lower level than it, which is ridiculous. Also, in the battle phase, it just become 3,500 and your opponent monster lose 1,000, so it can become like a 2,000 gap, which is also really ridiculous for this to, like, come over things, which is really powerful. It's basically the primary fusion monster that you want to summon, and part of the combo as well. And, like, also when it's into your graveyard during the next standby phase, it starts for your fusion spell, which is really, really great on that department. I wish it was immediately, but even the ability to search during the standby phase is really, really strong. And then we have the Predator Plant, or the only non-Predator Plant fusion beside this, which is just need 2 dark monsters on the field. It's a great card to summon. It's a great card to respond. It just wipe everything. It's ridiculous. This card is great. I like this quite a bit. I'm actually turned by running 2 copies of this, or only 1 copy of this, because most of the time, like, you only need 1. But sometimes it's still good for OTKs if the game get long. So running 2 Starving Venom is really, really nice. Then this one is only need a 1-off because it's hard to summon. You need a dark and a fusion monster, so it's not really the easiest thing to summon. But if you're able to summon this, it's an interruption because it's put a counter on stuff, and any monsters that have a Predator Plant counter, its effect is negated, so it's really great. This one is a Solemn-like effect, and you need 3 monsters, so if your opponent have 3 dark monsters, this can basically, with Super Polymerization, become that and become an annoying interruption to deal with. And then this one is kind of like a mini dark hole, so, you know, sometimes it's just great to have that as well. It's not really that easy to summon, but it's just good to have, I guess. So that's an option. And then for the other cards, we also run 1 copy of Mad Dragon with the Swamp, 1 Thousand Eyes Restrict, which should be Millennium Eyes Restrict once I'll get it, and then the 1 copy of Breaksword. Great cards, all of them. They're just, like, here to do their job. Mad Dragon is amazing. Just really easy Super Polymerization target. This should be Millennium, like I said. And Breaksword, you have a lot of level 3s, so you can take a lot of advantage out of it. And speaking of level 3s, we also run Cross Sheep, Cherubini, Aroma Marriage, Aroma Seraphy, Jasmine, and then the 1 copy of Rusty Bardiche. This is a very, very good lineup of Link monsters, beside also the Verite Anaconda. Jasmine is pretty good for going second, because if you have another Predator Plant, or, like, you know, a monster of plant that you want to summon, you basically tribute it, you then summon the, like, your Ogre, and then you link it and the Ogre, making all of your opponent monsters have additional counter on them, and then you contribute 1 of them and summon the Ogre back. Is really, really good. So you basically take this and the Ogre, and you make this, and it's really, really nice. Cross Sheep is obvious. You're a fusion deck. You really like this one. Rusty, because of the fact that, what are called? Phantom Knights? I don't know why I'm forgetting words right now. And then Cherubini is probably the only one that a lot of people are going to raise an eyebrow about. But, like I mentioned, you run a lot of level 3 monsters, and as you can see, as well, you run a lot of level 3s. Most of the time, if you open up with an Orpheus Scorpio and an Edge Imp chains, you're in a very, very good chance to bring this card out, and just really, really powerful, and just extends your play really, really well, which I like this card quite a bit. Obviously, if you don't want to run this, you're not have to, but I think it's just help your deck quite a lot, and just like help you extend in a very, very fun way, which you're going to see in a combo, which I'm going to do. But that's pretty much does it for the Predaplant lineup. And for the deck profile itself, alright, so for the combo itself, you technically only need 2 cards specifically, and those are the 2 cards that I mentioned are great together, which is the one Orpheus Scorpio and the one Edge Imp Chain. If you're able to open up with these 2 in your hand, you have 3 interruptions and a search for super polymerization in your hand during the standby phase, which is really good, so you have a pretty decent board out of these 2 cards for this deck specifically. And you're going to see why I think Cherubini is really, really great in this deck, but honestly, if you want to change things, that's up to you. But now let's get started. So starting things off, you're going to obviously normal summon your Orpheus Scorpio. Orpheus Scorpio is going to pitch this. You're then going to summon the Darlingtonia Cobra, and then Chain Link 1, Chain Link 2. You're going to basically first add to your hand the Patchwork, so in case of like your opponent kind of like stopping you, you still have this effect resolves. And then you also add to your hand the Ultra Polymerization because of Darlingtonia Cobra. Then we're actually going to activate Patchwork effect to add to our hand the Sabers and the Polymerization, which you will see for like it doesn't really matter when you do this, but it's like for something specifically, I'm going to actually add them right now to just explain. Then we're actually going to activate Ultra Polymerization to use these 2 from the field by paying 2,000 life points. And then summon out of our deck, not the Rusty, I actually made a mistake by this one, we're going to summon the Chimera Rafflesia. I actually kind of like flipped things around. Basically now we're going to activate the effect of this in the graveyard, banishing it, summon the Cobra and the Orpheus Scorpio, and then immediately link them off into Cherubini, which I mentioned before. Next up, I'm actually going to mention something before we'll move forward, because we are actually going to send to our graveyard the Ancient Cloak. And one thing that I should mention right now is that in this particular point, you can already summon one of your extra deck monsters that you want to. So if you need specifically to put one of your what are called Phantom Knight cards back in the top of your deck, so you will have the full engine played. You could use Sabers and use Sabers as an extender, which is not like always the best. Like sometimes you don't really like to leave this on the board, but it is an option to kind of like do things. So if you need to, this is an option and it's okay in that department as well. But now we're going to send to our graveyard the Ancient Cloak, banish the Ancient Cloak, and then to add to our hand the Shade Brigadine. We're then going to activate the effect of Shade, because we don't have any trap in our graveyard, and then we're going to use these 2, because they're 2 darks. We're going to summon, finally, the Rusty Bardiche in this particular zone. Then we're going to activate the effect of Rusty to send to our graveyard the Silent Boots, to then set to our side of the field the one of the Fog Blades. Then we're going to use the effect of Silent Boots to banish itself, and essentially add to our hand another Fog Blade, and set it to our side of the field. Then we're finally going to activate Polymerization using those 2, because this is a fusion monster, this is a dark monster, and we're going to use these to summon the Dracostapelia. It doesn't really matter, I'm just like trying to summon these in different zones just in case of things like Mech Knights, if they will be running around. And then lastly, obviously, during the standby phase, because of Chimera Rafflesia effect, you get to add to your hand a Super Polymerization. And that's how you basically get the best hand. Like, if you're able to open up like this is the best hand possible. Now, of course, there are some particular ways to play around, but this is my opinion, is the best end board, like, you know, out of like the less resources as possible. Now, you, of course, can summon other things, but out of your less resources as possible, this is a great board. Being able to kind of like get 2 interruptions, 3rd interruption, and then a Super Polymerization follow-up for next turn, and you still technically have 3 cards in your hand, and you're going to draw a 4th one next turn, and you have the extension of Sabers in the graveyard if you need that as well, so that's really cool. But that's pretty much does it for the combo itself, and now I'm going to throw you off for the next deck choices. Alright, so for the next deck choice, we're going to have 2 returning options from last week, which are going to be Zombie World, and Cyber Dragons. And then I'm actually going to take Lightsworn for the time being off because of the fact that I kind of like, I still need to work on it and I feel like I still need more time, so I am going to take it off. So the two other options are going to be either Monarchs or, finally, I actually got some of these cards and I think I can finally do it, Pure Thunder Dragon. So if you want me to do Pure Thunder Dragon, it should be D. If you want me to do Monarch, it should be C. If you want me to do Cyber Dragon, should be B. And if you want me to do Zombie World, should be A. Just type these names or whatever in the comments down below, and obviously I will pick at the end the winner. But yeah, that's pretty much does it for the video. So hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. It's really helped the channel out. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good day and stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.